Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. So, as I'm sure you're probably aware, I get a lot of stuff sent in to look at, and most of it's great. But a lot of it is not really suitable for its own video, for any number of reasons. Either it's just too short, or there's only really one interesting thing that happens, and the rest of it is just kind of mundane. Now that doesn't mean that these things don't deserve to get their chance in the spotlight, but it does mean that I tend to end up with an awful lot of clips that by themselves couldn't make a full video, but if I just wait and hang on to them long enough, I get the opportunity to do a compilation video like this. And that's why we're starting off here with Chaos Kind. In the Tier 9 Soviet destroyer, the Udaloy. You probably noticed that he came to this party a little late. Apparently something happened right after he pressed the battle button. He had to go and attend to it, and by the time he'd come back to it, the battle was well underway. Fortunately, the Udaloy is an extremely fast destroyer, and it did not take him long to get stuck into the thick of the action. This is a Tier 10 battle, by the way, in case it wasn't immediately obvious. But the Udaloy does just as well in a Tier 10 battle as it does in a Tier 9. As well as being extremely fast, she also has very good high explosive and armour piercing shells. On with 6 130mm guns with a very nice rate of fire, as you can see, and some fast traversing turrets. She also has a relatively heavy torpedo armament. Actually, there's no relatively about it, it is a very heavy torpedo armament. Fully upgraded, this ship can put 15 torpedoes into the water at the same time, although if you take a look at the paper doll down in the bottom left corner of the screen, you can see the layout of those torpedo launchers. Only one of them is mounted on the ship's centerline, which means that she can put 10 torpedoes down one side and another 5 down the other, but still, that's 15 torpedoes. Also, unlike most of the Russian destroyers that you'll have been playing up to this point, you don't have to launch them from suicide range. The stock torpedoes have a range of 8 kilometers, which is double the range of most Soviet destroyer torpedoes up until this point. Unfortunately, the Udaloy's stealth really sucks, and even with a full stealth build, you can't really stealth launch those torpedoes. However, the upgraded torpedoes, while they are 6 knots slower, but they're not slow, they still have a speed of 60 knots, they come with a range of 10 kilometers, making a stealth torpedo build possible. Although the strength of the Udaloy, while it does have a heavy torpedo armament, isn't in its torpedoes, it's in its guns, which are very, very good. There's a lot to research before the Udaloy becomes as good as it can be. There's an upgraded hull, an upgraded fire control, and the upgraded torpedoes. And even when fully upgraded, the stealth still sucks. It's pretty big for a destroyer. It's not that difficult to hit it, even when it is moving in excess of 40 knots. And this is compounded by a large turning circle and a very sluggish rudder shift. You really don't want to be getting into any close range knife fights in the Udaloy if you can possibly avoid it. That's just not what this ship is designed for. Medium to long range engagements like this, on the other hand, are absolutely fine. And it's because of that, the way this ship is built, in common with most of the other Soviet destroyers, with the Khabarovsk at Tier 10, and arguably the Grozovoy as well being perfect examples, that these ships tend to be seen as kind of selfish. Because they don't have the stealth, they do have a sluggish rudder shift, they do have a large turning circle, making them fairly unmanoeuvrable. That they don't bring an awful lot of utility to the team other than the amount of damage that they can do, which is not insignificant. But it's rare to find a Russian destroyer captain rushing a cap circle at the beginning of a match. Well, it's not necessarily rare to see them do it, but it's very rare to see them survive doing it, because they're just not built that way. That's not what they're for. Which means it can kind of suck when you hit that random battle button, you look at the team list, there's no carrier in play, and all 3 destroyers on your team are Russian, and the enemy team have 2 Shimikazes and an Asashio with 5.4 kilometer stealth, stealing your cap circles, and there's nothing you can do about it. But, well, that's the luck of the draw. What these Russian destroyers do bring is an awful lot of firepower. Right now, the Leon over... Hang on a minute, Leon? This can't be a Tier 10 battle. Unless there's some serious fail divisioning going on, you wouldn't see a Leon in a Tier 10 battle. Oh no, did I get it wrong? Oh, let's face it, come on, nobody's surprised. It's not like this would be the first time. Okay, so it's a tier 9 battle and he is top tier. But despite his late start, I mean, you can see what I mean by the firepower. He's already got 1 kill and done 43, nearly 44,000 damage. But he really is only just getting started. But the reason that you're watching this particular replay, well, I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I will say that it's because of the achievement that he's not going to get. And if that sounds overly cryptic, it's because it is. You're just going to have to wait and see. Well, anyway, the Leon's managed to get away by the skin of his teeth. I've just realised that's in Atlanta. It's another tier 7. How did I think this was a tier 10 battle? Oh, whatever, doesn't matter. Well, anyway, this is where the magic happens. Remember, anything up to 10 torpedoes off each side, and they do have a 10-kilometre range. So, 10 torpedoes in the water that side. The Atlanta seems to fancy his luck. He's come out from behind the island, although he has gone undetected. But when you're closing in at these kind of speeds, he's not going to stay undetected for long. The carrier is over there, but he's too far away to... Well, it's not like he can't have an impact, he's in a carrier after all, but he's too far away for Chaos Kind to do anything about him. But the Atlanta is not alone over there, because there was another ship that Chaos Kind was battering to death earlier, who managed to escape by the skin of his teeth, and there he is, the Fletcher. Shots already in the air, going to finish off the Atlanta. And there it is, and there goes the Fletcher, and guess what? There goes the Leon too. And that's what I meant when I said that the reason we're watching this is because of the achievement that Chaos Kind is not going to get. He got himself a double strike, but that's right, Akuzuki. Correct. There is no triple strike. Personally, I think he was robbed. Next up, it's time for another episode in the series that I like to call the Tier 5 Light Cruiser Show. Yes, Tier 5 Light Cruisers. Ships that are made of ammunition, fuel and citadels. And none really symbolise this more than the American Tier 5 Light Cruiser, the Uss Omaha, which is made of citadels, ammunition and fuel wrapped together with detonation cord. This ship loves to explode when you shoot at it. None of which bodes particularly well for Fentorian here in his USS Omaha, particularly since he's in a Tier 5 light cruiser in a Tier 7 battle. Yes, I'm sure I checked this time. The reason why the Omaha likes to explode as much as it does, and this is equally true of its Tier 4 predecessor, the Phoenix, is because it has a massive exposed citadel that takes up most of the length of the ship and sits well above the waterline. But hey, that's what armour's for, right? Well, yes it is. And that's the other reason why the Omaha likes to explode as much as it does. Because it basically doesn't have any. The bow and stern are only covered in 13mm of plating. I mean, that's destroyer standards of armour. Armour as flimsy and weedy as that will get overmatched by every heavy cruiser and every battleship that this ship is going to face, which means that angling your armour will only work against other light cruisers and destroyers. If you're sailing the Omaha and a battleship spots you, the natural reaction is to nose in. Don't. It won't make any difference whatsoever. The only thing that will happen is that the battleship's armour-piercing shell won't even pause to wipe its feet on the way through your bow plating and the 37mm of citadel plating that you have at the front. The only thing that armour will do is arm the fuse of the armour-piercing shell so that it explodes inside your citadel and blows you clean out of the water. Oh, and don't forget, heavy cruisers can do this to you as well. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but the safest thing to actually do if you're in the Omaha and you see battleships or heavy cruisers bearing down on you is turn to give a flat broadside. Because the chances are that their armour-piercing shells are just going to over-penetrate and sail right through the other side without exploding. The problem with this tactic is that every destroyer and light cruiser will be able to citadel you in the broadside. So you're kind of screwed if you do and screwed if you don't in the Omaha. The rest of the armour is not much better. The deck and upper belt is slightly improved. It's a grand total of 16 millimeters thick. The only good news about that is that it won't be overmatched by heavy cruiser plunging fire coming in from above. But it will still be overmatched by battleship plunging fire coming in from above. You start to see the problem, and the reason why Tier 5 light cruisers, the Omaha in particular, loves to explode as violently as it does whenever it starts getting poked by sharp metal objects. Now, if you're sitting there thinking to yourself, this sounds absolutely comically awful. I mean, why would anybody play the USS Omaha for any longer than they absolutely had to in order to grind out and unlock the Tier 6 Pensacola or Dallas? This ship sounds terrible. The Omaha is not a bad ship. It is very fragile, for all the reasons that I've just explained. But on the plus side, it brings a lot of firepower to the table. The ship is armed with 12 152mm guns. Now, admittedly, only 4 of them are in turrets. The rest are all in casemates, down the port and starboard side of the ship, which means you can't bring all 12 of those to bear on one target at the same time. On the plus side, it does mean that you don't have to swing the entire ship around to get most of the guns firing to a target on the unengaged side when you've finished dealing with a target on one side. It's also very fast by cruiser standards, with a top speed of 34 knots, more obviously if you equip a speed flag. But the thing that everybody forgets about the USS Omaha, and this is also true of its predecessor at Tier 4, the USS Phoenix, is that the Omaha is one of the very few American cruisers that has torpedoes. Now, they're not particularly good torpedoes. They only have a range of 5.5 kilometers, a fairly pedestrian speed of only 56 knots, but they don't have to be particularly fast when they're getting launched from close range like that. And she does at least have torpedoes. And she has a lot of them. She's got 2 triple launchers on each side. That's 12 torpedoes in total. That's more than most destroyers get at this kind of level. All of which is a fairly long-winded and convoluted way of saying, woe betide the battleship, or in this case, battleships, 2 of them, Tier 7 Gneisenauers, who by the way also have torpedoes. Torpedoes that have missed, along with, fortunately for Fentorian, most of their 15-inch gun salvos. Because if you let an Omaha get as close as this, hilarious things can and will happen. If you're the Omaha. Not so much if you're the Gneisenauers. Our third and final clip for you today is not actually a clip, it's an entire World of Warships random battle. Now if you're staring at the video length and thinking, hang on a minute, this video's only 20 minutes and we're already 13.5 minutes in, how can this be a full random battle? Yeah, that's kind of the point. And that's why we're watching this. This is Captain Norse in the excellent Tier 8 Japanese gunboat destroyer, the Akuzuki. And yes, this is what my second cat is named for. And if you've ever wondered what all the noise is in the background of these videos, there she is, claiming a box. Because that's just what cats do. I like the way the Japanese name their ships, by the way. Because they tend to come up with very poetic names. I mean, the British came up with good names for our ships as well. Particularly the battleships. Things like Revenge, Warspite, Repulse. But the Japanese names are cool too. They tended to name their destroyers after winds and moons. Hence, Kamikaze means divine wind. Akuzuki is named after a moon, in this case, autumn moon, which is kind of pretty and poetic, and that's the reason why I picked the name for my cat. Captain Norse probably doesn't really give a shit. All he knows is he's sailing a badass destroyer. But what he didn't know was how quickly this game was going to be over. Because it's very unusual for a World of Warships game to be over in less than 10 minutes. It's the complete opposite of World of Tanks, where it's highly unusual for a game to be over in more than 6 minutes. And that's the reason why we're watching Captain Norse here today, because he is about to participate in a World of Warships battle that's going to end faster than a lot of World of Tanks battles. And that doesn't happen every day. Hell, that doesn't happen every month. Now, what we're not going to do here is spend time talking about the pros and cons of the ship itself. Mostly because we're just not going to have time. All you really need to know is that this is not a torpedo boat. It's all about the guns. It gets improved penetration on its high explosive shells to make up for the low caliber. They are only 100mm guns. Oh, he's been spotted. Slowing down in anticipation of that. Smoking up. There's only one radar on the enemy team. That's the Riga, and he's on the other side of the map. So this, well, it isn't exactly safe because they know exactly where he is. And the Fiji's hydro could be a risk. But the Fiji's being way too aggressive here. Notice that Norse captain switched to armour piercing once he had the broadside of the Fiji to shoot at. And he hasn't taken into consideration the fact that while the Akuzuki does rely on its guns, it also has torpedoes. Only one launcher, of course. But it does also have a torpedo reload booster to back that single torpedo launcher up, which Norse captain has just triggered, because here comes the enemy key. Now the match timer was at 17 minutes and 32 seconds before the first casualty, which was the Fiji. But the enemy team have already lost 3 ships. Another 2 have died elsewhere. Norse captain's team have lost 1 destroyer, the Tier 7 HMS Jervis. That is the only ship they are going to lose for the remainder of this extremely short battle. The reason you don't see results like this as often in World of Warships as you do in World of Tanks, that even if one team consists entirely of potatoes, they're all still entirely capable of damaging and sinking everything on the enemy team. You know, except for the aircraft carriers, because reasons. That is not true in World of Tanks, where you can often find yourself facing an enemy team, half of which you can't penetrate from the front. And because they're all corridor maps, you can't work your way around to the side. Not so in World of Warships. Oh, hello. We have some company. But that's why results like this are as rare as they are in this game. Oh, the Fantask. Yeah, I mean, not a bad gunboat. But I'll take the Pepsi challenge in the Akuzuki against the Fantask any day of the week. Even if you did start the engagement on 2,000 lower health, because the Fantask is getting bitch slapped. Not just by Norse captain, but also the Brindisi, and it kind of looked like the Frederick the Great up to the north, or at least his secondaries. So here's where the Key enters the party. He seems a little reluctant, but he can stay where he is and continue to get hit by the Brindisi and the Frederick the Great up to the north, or take his chances in here with Norse captain's Akuzuki. At the moment, Norse captain is holding fire on his torpedoes, waiting for them to reload. I'm looking to see whether or not the Nelson over there is going to volunteer to be today's second torpedo receptacle, and it kind of looks like he is. Remember, only one launcher, and a fairly long reload, but the torpedo reload booster is about to come off cooldown. Here's the problem. If he stays where he is, he could start getting hit by the Nelson secondaries, even though his main battery guns are pointing the wrong way. But if he inches forward, he's going to start, and is, getting shot at by the Key. The Nelson is no longer a threat. The Key, however, very definitely is, because it's actually a fairly potent battleship at close quarters. It has torpedoes for one thing, which often catches people by surprise, but it's also not terrible with a secondary build, because like the Akuzuki, most of its secondaries are 100mm guns, and they also get the Japanese high explosive penetration bonus. They also have reasonably good range, and she has a lot of them, and they were the torpedoes, by the way, as advertised. And the 100mm secondaries on the Key are backed up by a whole bunch of 140mm guns as well. What the Key fails to have taken into consideration, however, are 2 fairly important factors. Now, while it's true that he may have seen Norse captain launch those torpedoes at the Nelson and thinks that he's safe from torpedo attack, he quite clearly isn't, because he's forgotten, or didn't know, that the Akuzuki has a torpedo reload booster. That's right, Akuzuki. Yes, you have a torpedo reload booster. The other thing that he doesn't appear to be taking into consideration is that his team have just lost 6 ships. They're now down to 35 points. And if they reach 0 points, for example, by losing another ship, this match will be over. And that is exactly what happened 3 minutes and 58 seconds after the first casualty was inflicted. And I don't think I've ever seen a game of World of Warships end as quickly as that. But we did today, and I hope you enjoyed watching it, and the other 2 clips, because that's all I have time for apparently now. I have to go and refuel a Japanese destroyer, Akuzuki? Yes? Yeah, she's sitting next to a food bowl giving me the look, so I have to go and refuel a Japanese destroyer. In the meantime, as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.